Hello and welcome to episode 13 of the Planning Pundit with me, Linda Wright. Now, what are we going to talk about today? What has come up, and I'm a bit late with uploading all of these, so you'll have to excuse me. Life gets in the way sometimes and you get a bit busy, but there's been quite a few interesting issues that have arisen in the last 3 weeks that I think are questions that are asked of planning by a lot of people. So episode 13, unlucky for some, is going to be about the Green Belt, development in the Green Belt and in the open countryside, because a lot of people think that the restrictions on development is just on designated Green Belt. And that's not the case. And a lot of people query and say, well, it's not designated Green Belt. Why are you telling me these things? Well, because anything, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go into planning geek speak, but bear with me. Anything that is outside of a settlement boundary or a development envelope. Lots of different councils will call them different things. But what it means is either a village or an urban boundary. And you've got to be careful also with infilling in some of these things, because lots of councils also have tiers of villages, so such as main service villages, minor service villages, and it goes down in a cascade. So, please be aware of that. Obviously, if you've got planning professionals or agents looking after you, they will advise you of this. But a lot of people come to me and say, oh, well, development in the Green Belt, it's all right. You just stick a caravan on there, live in it for a few years, put some horses in the field, and you're away. Then you apply for a certificate of lawfulness and you're off. No. A lot of people have got caught with this. Please don't try it. There are certain circumstances, and they're all part of this urban myth and urban legend. Well, such and such a body down the road, and it'll be the bloke at the end of the bar in the pub that will tell you this. Please don't take planning advice from the bloke at the end of the bar, unless, of course, you're drinking with a planning consultant. That is a different matter. Anyhow, so development in the Green Belt is severely restricted, but also because it's all about trying to prevent coalescence. It's a very old concept, but it's still valid. It's about trying to avoid coalescence and the joining up of towns and urban areas, and also protecting the openness of the Green Belt and protecting the Green Belt from harm that the development might cause to that openness. So that's Green Belt, but also open countryside matters as well. And the open countryside policies are almost the same as Green Belt. They're maybe not quite as restrictive, but they're not too dissimilar. So please be aware, if you're not in an urban area, you're not within a village settlement or a development envelope, whatever the council are going to call it, please be aware that if it's not in any of these things, then there will be restrictive policies regarding development. Now, lots of people come to me and say, well, another volume house builder down the road has just built 300 houses. Why can't I? What's the harm? Well, the problem is with all of the great and good volume house builders, they probably will have been promoting these sites over several years, possibly decades. But also, if a volume house builder is building 200, 300, 400, 500 houses, they are helping the council with their housing delivery. You coming along and wanting to build a 5-bed des res in the open countryside does not fall into that category. You are not helping with the volume housing delivery. Now, there's all sorts of policies going around with central government at the moment that over Green Belt, but the principle remains the same. And the National Planning Policy Framework currently there is a consultation out at the moment to amend the National Planning Policy Framework, and that's yet to sort of come out of the other end of the sausage machine, if you like. But currently, there is a protection still afforded to the Green Belt, and planning departments will be duty bound to follow this. Now, again, a lot of people, the same people who say, oh, well, you just stick a caravan in a field and put some horses on there, and if you can get away with that for 4 years living in it, then submit a certificate of lawfulness. Not quite as simple as that. You'll remember there was a big media furore about a man who built a house behind a whole lot of hay bales and then removed the hay bales after whatever it was, 4 years, and went ta-da, and there was a house there. Now, this rattled on and on and on and on and on, but the judge found that eventually in the High Court found that he had been duplicitous and he'd done it on purpose, and he fully knew that what he was doing in the Green Belt was wrong, and he was just flouting planning laws. So please be careful with these things. I know you're going to say, oh, I can see such and such thing and such thing. And of course, the big thing from where I live is certain footballer, Mr. Neville, who got planning permission for a house up on the moors. And it's locally, and it's called the Teletubby House. Now, to be perfectly honest, that took years, and it was probably approved with gritted teeth eventually. I don't know if it was allowed on appeal, I can't remember. But it was more or less an underground, and it was called Teletubby House because it had all of these arched areas and mounds of ground. It's never been built. I think he started it, but it has never been built. Now, if a man with, and I don't want to be sued over this, but if a man with a certain level of wealth has not finished this type of house, then does that not say something about, I think he probably got ground down by the planning system, to be honest, but does that not say something about how difficult it is to get this kind of development in the Green Belt? Because a lot of people will say to me, but if I do, under paragraph 80, as it is now, of the National Planning Policy Framework, if I do a fabulous sustainable development and its high level of design and it's all of this, then I can quote paragraph 80 and I can get approval for my dwelling. Well, not really. No, there are issues, there are certain circumstances where you can build, and one of that is rural worker dwellings. Obviously there are exceptions sites, but exceptions sites generally tend to have to be linked to a village, and they tend to be for local needs. Now you have to be careful with these, and you have to look at the policies very carefully. You can also reuse redundant buildings. Now, they have to be buildings. You can't point to a pile of rocks in the corner and say, well, it was a barn, I'm going to make it into a house. No. And these new houses, and you can reuse and subdivide houses, existing houses or existing barns in the Green Belt. And there are certain prior approval possibilities as well, and maybe I'll do that on an entirely separate video, because that's a very specific procedure. So you can do a number of things, and if there are existing buildings there, yes, they can be demolished, and the same footprint, similar footprint, can be, you can make it a bit bigger, can be put back. And you see a lot of developments that look like farm courtyards and buildings. So that again is possible. But if you are going to try and argue this paragraph 80, because the bloke at the end of the bar in the pub has told you, then you need to have your ducks in a row. You need to know that it's probably going to be a long-term strategy. And you need to know that it has to be of exceptional quality, reflecting highest standards in architecture, sustainability. It has to raise the standards of the area generally in terms of design. and it can't impact on the setting, the immediate setting and the long distance setting of the landscape, because that would again be contrary to Green Belt. But so there is this sort of chink where the door is slightly ajar, but it's not for the faint-hearted. It requires some serious work, and there are still circumstances whereby the council can refuse these things. So I think I've said enough about Green Belt. Be very, very careful. The presumption is that development in the Green Belt, new development, will, for residential purposes, will not be permitted unless it's an exception or unless it's for agricultural or rural workers. And there will be an agricultural tie placed on that that says it should not be used in perpetuity for anything other than an agricultural or rural worker. There are exceptions. They have to go to housing needs people in the local community. And then there's this sustainability and high quality and exceptional quality of design. So it's almost like, you know, come on, if you think you're confident enough, give it a go. But it again is not for the faint-hearted. The Green Belt is there to protect the openness and the landscape. So be very, very careful. If it's outside a settlement boundary, that is what the council are likely to come back at you with, quite legitimately, because that's what the policies and the designation of the Green Belt says, and it's backed up by the NPPF. So I'm going to leave it there. That was me, Linda Wright, Planning Pundit. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe. Subscribe doesn't mean to say you have to pay for anything. I'm not going to nag you with spam emails. That's just not how I roll. So that was Green Belt episode 13. I will try and post my very late other videos for your delight and delectation. It's been a pleasure. If you enjoyed this, as I say, please share it and let other people know about it. That's me, Linda Wright, the Planning Pundit. Thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next one.